we are live on Facebook. I believe we are. Are we, Todd?
I will confirm. It looks like we are.
Okay, very good. I'm not able to see what's happening here.
Well, we are live. I can confirm that.
Very good, but it's very difficult for me to, okay, here we go. Looks like there is a delay here. That would be the issue. Okay, so we'll go ahead with the video. A little bit, we're trying something different today by tying in the Zoom meeting into the live event portion of Facebook. But I want to welcome everyone in joining us today to another New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. We are able to take and see comments through this medium. And I want to welcome our guest today, Mr. Todd Christopher George Lund Jr. Todd, welcome to the program.
Thank you, JR. For those who don't know me, my name is, Todd, as it was just given, and I am a graduate of Stockton University back in 2020 with a degree in economics. And I'm here to speak today about reapportionment, what I think would be a better system for the legislature, and how important and how it affects your life.
And Todd, you were recently, you spoke a couple of days ago before the Appointments Commission. Explain to the audience what the Appointments Commission is, and then we'll look at the state constitution, Article 2, Section 2, that describes the redistricting process, and why that is so very, very important for elections in New Jersey.
So there are two different major commissions that happen about every 10 years. And we have the Apportionment Commission, which is where I spoke at, and the Redistricting Commission. The difference between the two is the Apportionment Commission works on the state legislative districts. So the districts you vote for your local senator and assemblyman. The Redistricting Commission deals with Congress, all the congressmen. And so there is a little bit of a different selection process for them, but the gist is the same. It's the two major parties, each select an equal number of members. And in the case of the Apportionment Commission, it's 5 for Democrats, 5 for Republicans. And an 11th member is selected by the Supreme Court to either break a tie or to hopefully foster a compromise plan of some sort. And I got to speak before the Apportionment Commission. I can go into that a little bit later, unless you would like me to do that now, JR.
Yeah, well, you can go free to go ahead and explain that. We also have a very well put together PowerPoint presentation that you've put together as well. So go ahead and continue to describe this process and what you said before the Appointments Commission and the point that you were trying to make to them, which was very, very, it was essential that they were told.
So our state constitution was designed in 1947, but the current legislature was redesigned pretty radically in 1966. And in doing so, they basically used population as the basis for now drawing districts. Okay, that makes some sense. And they had pretty wide range of ability to work with numbers, and were trying to maintain the counties as lines as much as possible. So if you lived in, in Atlantic County, you would probably have an Atlantic County senator, and you would have 2 Atlantic County assemblymen. In Ocean County, where I live, you would have probably 3 senators, and I would vote for all 3 in the same year. And then I would have 2 assemblymen based on the district I was in Ocean County. This system really kind of fell apart when the Supreme Court of the United States said the populations have to get a lot closer than what you were allowing. We were allowing what they call a deviation of basically from the ideal population of 40%, 20 below and 20 above. The Supreme Court says, no, you got to get it within 5 and 5. So that's a lot tighter of an option. So the system was kind of thrown completely out on the question of using counties, but our state constitution still mandates that counties should be respected when possible. But the Supreme Court of New Jersey said, nah, forget that. We don't even want you to pay attention to that rule. You don't have to enforce it. Now, my problem is that basically gives the commission unlimited liberty in drawing districts that politically protect themselves, or simply for the protection of incumbents or for political partisan advantage. And so, if Democrats are hoping to win next year, they're going to draw a very Democrat-leaning map, and vice versa for the Republicans. There is a theory, and I think it's a fairly credible theory, that in the year before the year 2000, Republicans controlled the state legislature of New Jersey. After 2000, it went to Democrats. And that switch was around the period of redistricting by the Democrats. Their map won over the Republicans. And so this is a problem as a consequence. My hopes is we can base it more around the county districts and not split them as badly around the county lines as so much. So you're not looking so much as to partisan advantage. You're looking more to actual communities of interest, right? People in Somerset have particular issues that they need to deal with. They shouldn't be split up into literally 5 or 4 different districts. They should be closer to like 1. So as an example.
That's very good, Todd. And I think you're right. You're right on point with the idea of the counties. Counties, we see there's been a lot of course, the word that we want to use now is the word gerrymandering.
Right.
And let's explain to the audience what gerrymandering is. And we see this done when other parts of counties are brought into a legislative district.
Yeah.
And
so
they're known either to be, essentially primarily Democratic voting areas or Republican voting areas. And gerrymandering tries to, there's a way in which it's done to give an advantage to a particular party. And that's what we're trying to, as being objective about and fair about this process, we try to avoid that. And I think you're on point by talking about essentially creating legislative districts in counties and staying within those counties.
Yeah, we're going to get to see a couple of maps and good examples of what gerrymandering looks like. And both parties try to do it. I mean, that's the whole game, right? But the goal is to try to take a little bit of that leeway away from them. And using the county lines is a good way of doing that. Do you want to show the state constitution?
Yeah, I just want to show the state constitution if I could first. So if you're looking at the Constitution, like Todd just said, 1947 was when our last Constitution was derived, but there was a lot of legislative redistricting and redoing in the 60s, as he said. But we see that Article 2, elections and suffrage, Section 1 talks about the election process, but Section 2 gives us the information about the federal consensus. Districts shall be established by a New Jersey Redistricting Commission. Then there are we are one of the states that holds these different commissions. Others, the legislative bodies themselves. In other states, legislative bodies themselves do the redistricting. This is different because the commission's used. Then we see that there are 12 members to be appointed, 2 members from each party, who the party leader will appoint. The state party leaders will appoint. Then there are appointments made by the minority leader in the Senate, the minority leader in the General Assembly, Speaker of the General Assembly, 2 appointments, and Todd has gone over this. But this is where you can read the information specifically what constitutes these commissions and the purpose of redistricting. So you want to go to that source. Todd is going to give us more information as he goes through his presentation. I also wanted to share before he gets started a video that was created by the Eagleton Institute and was made by Ingrid Reed, and she talks about redistricting and what it's all about. And I think it's very, very fair. It's about 32 minutes in length. It's very, very informative, and this will only reiterate the information that you're going to be hearing from Todd and myself today. So that is a good information for you. I will include these links at the end of the broadcast, but now I'd like Todd to give us and I do want to say, Todd, before we get started, that I want to commend you on doing the hard work and research that you've done. And this is what is so important for people to be able to, they have to be able to tap into this and get this information. First of all, they have to be motivated to get the information, to find out what redistricting is all about. This is the whole purpose of the constitutional Republicans. This is education, nuts and bolts education that we're being offered. And I want to commend Todd for the outstanding job he's done with this PowerPoint presentation and speaking before the Appointments Commission. He's showing great maturity and great wisdom already. And we're very, very proud of Todd. And he is helping me and further educate our citizens. And very, very pleased to have Todd here and to give this presentation. So Todd, it's all yours.
Thank you, JR. So yeah, we'll jump right into it. All right, cool. So this is going to kind of touch on what the current process is. We're going to get into what I think ought to be done, which is a little different. And I'm looking for people's feedback. So you could always, of course, go to the Constitutional Republicans group page and find the full slide and system there. So our current legislature is 40 districts. You have 40 senators, 80 assemblymen, and 2 assemblymen from each district. They have to be compact, meaning they have to be, together. Contiguous, meaning they have to actually, you can't just have parts like, you can't go from Newark and then down to like Salem City. You can't just they have to be touching. And they have to be whole municipalities. So with the exclusion of 2 really populated cities in New Jersey, that'd be Jersey City and Newark. So that's the gist on that. I went through a little bit of this before about kind of the history of how we got there. But basically the courts just keep stepping in, where basically I would have preferred that, the people would have had a little bit more say of how this was all going to go down. But, such is life. So, we can try to reform what we have. So here's the problem. We kind of touched on it before. Nobody thought that the whole county system was going to go away under any respect.
Incidentally, Todd, just let me interrupt for a moment. Go back to that last slide if you would, because this will give the people the foundation from where we're coming from today, so that you're able to understand today's presentation that Todd's giving us. That you need to look at this and read the information here. There's a lot of detailed information there, and this will provide. This is how we got to where we are with the redistricting and why it's so important that we get it right.
Yeah, so I should mention that prior to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court stepping in 1966, New Jersey for nearly 200 years used counties as the basis for all of its political systems. And abruptly, they snapped and changed it on a whim. And they tried to maintain as much as humanly possible what they could. But overall, the Supreme Court was just too powerful and ordered them to change things otherwise. So I want to restore some value to our very legitimate communities, which are counties.
And as a constitutional Republican, we support that same position, Todd, because if we get back to the counties, which is ideally what we're looking for, and we look to each election night, we were looking at the counties for the gubernatorial election. And why not for the legislators and our assembly and our senators? So, and like you said, there was a precedent, there was a historical precedent that was already established with our counties to begin with until the Supreme Court got involved.
So, so basically, nobody thought we were going to get what we got as a system. There was obvious gerrymandering. I talked about in the 2000s what was likely to happen. This is really interesting. Republican districts overwhelmingly vote relative to what they're expected to win. So my district, District 9, had the largest vote for any given candidates out of in the entire state. I think they got something like 71,000 votes each, which is incredible in terms of New Jersey voting. But like, even though my guys win by huge margins, we still turn out to vote. In Democrat districts, where it's overwhelming blowout elections, like in Hudson County, you have really low turnout. And so this is difficult for even Democrats themselves in trying to grapple with this issue of like an election is decided by only 6,000 people voting in Hudson County and in different parts there. Whereas in my election, you have well over 100,000. So that's a very important problem that should be addressed. And when districts are not competitive, you have unresponsive, comparable incumbents. Now, I'm saying that from incumbents that I'm not particularly upset with, but I would like a little. Sometimes I'd like to see a little more from them. And part of the problem is you don't necessarily get that if they have no reason to come knock on your door. So those are the issues that I have identified. So this is the plan.
You had a very and Todd, let's just let me interrupt you. Just go back for a second, one more time.
Yeah.
I want the people to see that you see the bullet points there on gerrymandering, and it shows you the negative aspects of gerrymandering, of course, which each viewer can read for themselves. But don't gloss over this presentation. And what we're going to do, Todd, we're going to make the PowerPoint presentation available again. We should be able to attach it to this video. So let's
I think we can definitely make that happen.
But take your time and see and read what's the problem. And here he's identified this with the slide. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the map that was adopted last term, which was the Democrat plan. My personal favorite / worst district is number 16 over here. It goes from the Delaware River in Hunterdon County, comes up and around to Somerset County, and then cuts through Somerset into Mercer to pick up Princeton, and then jump over and get South Brunswick. What? This is abysmal. There are no people in South Brunswick that have anything similar to the interests of the people of Hunterdon County. But they chopped it up because it was just to protect a particular incumbent at the time. There are number 12.
This is a graphic, Todd, that shows what gerrymandering looks like.
Yeah.
We can read about it in words, we can read about it in print, but here you can see the convolution and the lack of continuity involved, and you're literally looking at gerrymandering on a screen.
Yes, this is pure form. You got District 12, another one that goes from Jackson, which is known for Six Flags, all the way out to Old Bridge in Middlesex County. I mean, it's absurd. These people have no similar interests whatsoever.
Now again, Todd, explain to the people what splits means.
Yes. So our state constitution defines that counties should not be split more often than absolutely necessary to achieve the population limit. And so we refer to these as oversplits. And so we count the number of districts that are in a given county. So I'll take Atlantic County, for instance. There are 4 districts that are in Atlantic County at any given time. Only one that's a core, which would be District 2. So there are 2 districts. You would expect that there would be 1 and a part districts that are in there. So that would be about 2. So that means there's 2 oversplits there, because there should be 2. There are 4. Yep. So there are 2 oversplits. Now, some oversplits are expected. You're going to have some. There's just no way around it because of the population limits. But it shouldn't be 30. That's absurd. 30. To give you an idea, it's gone up every decade we've done this. It went from 15 to 22 to 23 to 40 or to 30. That's incredible. So only of these districts in here could be considered competitive. And that's even a stretch. Honestly, there were probably only 2 real competitive districts. And it was overwhelmingly in favor of Democrats how they drew this. You can see up in the corner, it says there's about 25 basically guaranteed Democrat districts, which gives them the majority. Now, this is the Republican plan from that year. Not particularly better in the question of gerrymandering. There are 31 splits here. But there are a lot more competitive districts, which would have made it possible for the Republicans to possibly win their elections. Or most importantly, in 2013, when Chris Christie won overwhelmingly 60% of the vote, in the Assembly, Republicans earned a grand total of 51% of the vote. They did not gain 1 new seat. They were still relegated to a minority of the legislature while winning the most votes. Kind of ridiculous. So this is, another particular issue. So Republicans had a thing.
So neither party got it right, Todd, in 2011 with redistricting, did they?
Correct. Neither one got it right. And so a group actually
the Republican offering is just as much a graphic visual for gerrymandering as the Democrat.
Correct. Absolutely. I am a Republican, but I am ashamed by the material put forward. Someone sued, and the Supreme Court eventually rejected it. But this is the map that was given by a Tea Party group that was not looking at incumbents whatsoever or even party division. This map still would have favored the Democrats, mind you, but it was far more in line with the counties. Now, you may not know what the counties just look like, most people who are watching, but I will tell you this looks a lot similar, and you'll see other maps where you'll see the counties. You'll go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But this is
right,
significantly.
But you still see Todd where the northeastern corridor of the state, that is hugging New York, and that's so forth. That's still entirely too convoluted, and the county maps are a lot simpler than that.
Yes, they are.
They did a better job in the South and in the Northwest, but still not where we would want to go in the urban corridors.
Exactly. So so we'll see a couple of more things, and so this is basically where we need reform.
Very good.
We should need to get a lot closer back to where we historically were, and there are ways of doing that are legal. All right. The question is always, how can you make this legal under the current Supreme Court precedent? And the answer is there is a way, and hopefully I can show you.
Very good.
So these would be fairly significant changes in some ways. I'm going to start with the Assembly, which will be more familiar to people. So we should give representatives based on the number in their county, the people that they have. So in my county of Ocean County, there would have been 5 in 2011. We would get 5 assemblymen, and you would vote for those assemblymen by ranking them. So say, let's use 2016 presidential election as a good example. I was a Ted Cruz fan. And so my first vote would have gone to Ted Cruz, and then probably Marco Rubio or someone second or like. And so I would rank them down until I got to my least favorites, or just leave them off the thing entirely. Maybe you're more moderate, supposedly, right? And you want to vote for some Democrats in there or whatever. Sure. And they'll have their, chances at winning. So every county is likely, or most every county, to have some from one party and some from the other, which means you're not just going to have more radical Democrats that are up in Hudson County. You're going to elect Republicans in Hudson County. And vice versa. You're going to get a couple of sure Democrats, from Ocean County or, Monmouth, et cetera. So this would hopefully give, some representation. So if you have, you want a more conservative representative, you can vote for your more conservative representative. Or if you were, not more conservative, you could vote for a less conservative person. The way we reduce the deviations, because just giving them based on their population is not legal under the current, Supreme Court precedent. We can give them a set of votes. Okay. Each representative would be able to cast as a block more than one vote. So maybe they cast like 1.5 votes or something like that. This system is actually already used in New Jersey school districts. In some school districts where there's a bunch of municipalities in them, they vote by a part of vote or a more than one vote. So they could vote maybe 0.7 of a vote or 1.2 votes. And that's kind of in the weeds about it. But the gist is that we make it legal by doing that. And certain states like New York are considering doing this. There's a proposed amendment to their state constitution that will give the authority to use more county-based systems that use this weight voting system. Now, so that's the assembly. The Senate, I think New Jersey is fairly politically homogenous in a lot of respects. In terms of like, we're not a huge state. We're not Canada. We're not, there aren't so regional factions so much as there is in other places. So in the Senate, I would say that you vote every 4 years, probably as a referendum against the governor for your favorite political party. So I vote Republican and Democrats will vote Democrat. And so the point is that my political party will get a certain number of representatives to go to the legislature. If roughly 55% of the population of New Jersey or the electorate votes for Republicans, they will get 55% of the seats. And each senator will get one vote, and it would work like it normally does. The major difference is that votes would actually translate, like if a high voter turnout amongst Republicans will actually translate to Republican wins or vice versa. So it actually represents the broad spectrum of political interests in the state of New Jersey. Over on the right-hand side, it shows kind of a schedule, if I use that term correctly. And like 2021, we would have voted for the assemblyman and our governor. And then in 2023, we would vote for the assembly and then our senator. And it would go back and forth. I am willing to be debated on this question, whether that should be done that way. But I think it's the best way to encourage high turnout in the elections that we have by having two major statewide elections at the same time. So any question, JR, you have any questions on this or?
No, very, very good. This is all information that we will need to review and go over again as we provide the PowerPoints, but I understand what you're proposing here. And I think it's worthy of review, worthy of consideration.
Yes,
So,
it is in some ways.
You got a lot of information to share. So
yeah,
we're gonna. I want to look at this as a whole body, the whole body together, and then we're gonna. Each of us will go and look at this information and review it more carefully. But I think it's an interesting proposal and one worthy of consideration.
So this is where I was talking about where, each of the counties have their populations over here. If we used 80 seats. So some counties, you'll see in the next slide, are overrepresented and some are wildly underrepresented by their assemblymen. So as you can see, some places people are not going to be able to run just unopposed or, as an incumbent, but that's the consequence of making things more equal in some ways. So I'll move along to the next slide regarding this. Yep, that's how you vote for them, blah, blah, blah. So here's the current residencies for everybody. As you can see, there's the political corridor, which, in some ways makes a lot of sense. That's where people live. But when I move it so you can see it more clearly, this is the breakdown by county. So right now, no one as of 2020 represented Salem or Cumberland County. That's crazy. Cumberland County has a lot of people, relatively, and they very much deserve some representation. But somehow they got gypped. And so you can also see that a lot of the counties are very politically homogenous. Middlesex County.
Todd, just let me interject now. Explain what you mean about, we obviously have our LD1 candidates and representatives, but explain to the people what you mean that Salem and Cumberland weren't represented in relation to what? Why are you saying that?
In the county, they don't have an individual they can go to that says, I represent Cumberland County, right? John Testa in the Senate represents Cumberland County, but there's no one in the assembly who does that. And so
very well. Same thing with Salem, because you had the CD3 team or rather the LD3 team of Sweeney and Burchicelli, and Delaferro. Now thankfully they've been replaced by Durr, Sawyer, and McCarthy Patrick. So, but that's a very good point that you make, and that's what I wanted the people to be able to understand what you meant, because these representatives are also from other counties and making up the district, and that's why Todd's proposal would give Salem County and Cumberland County, if we go back to this county system, the historical system, that's what would be afforded the people of Cumberland, Salem County. Okay, proceed.
Yep.
Very
So
good.
Middlesex County is a great example of a county that's a fairly large population, but it's all Democrat. Well, that's how we think about it. In reality, there are 45% of Middlesex folks vote for Republicans, and they never get someone that can represent them. And so this is how it should look under my proposed system. You would have, Republicans from Middlesex County. You're going to have Democrats from Ocean County. Now, this is based on 2020. Today, actually, Gloucester, Atlantic, and Cumberland would have majority Republican representation, which is great news.
Cumberland went Republican, and so did Salem. Traditionally stays Republican, but now you have Gloucester County there. Now Gloucester County is Republican. So just make sure that the viewers are aware of what it is that you're saying and where the direction that we would like to see it go. Right,
exactly. And of course, this would make it so there's a real opportunity for political parties to win everywhere. But of course, I like the Republican Party best. And this would mean we actually get a chance to win in some of these larger urban counties where you can actually get someone who represents these folks. You can't use these, there's no political, there's no minority person who represents us. First of all, there's a great Black man living in Cumberland County that represents Mr. Antoine down there, does an excellent job of representing Cape May County. But we don't have those urban Republicans that have a chance at representation. This would give them that chance. And so it takes that claim right away from them. And I would love to see that. Now, this is where the voting weight comes in. I'm going to show you, based on the size of the dots, the difference in votes. All right. So it's a very little difference because it shouldn't make a big deal in a lot of ways. Salem has a much smaller dot than Cumberland County. All right. They both get one person, but Cumberland County gets like 2 times the votes as Salem. Okay. That seems like a fair compromise to me in order to give counties the proper representation they deserve. So as you can see, pretty average across the board.
And again, that map would change today because you'd have a red dot there at Cumberland. So the people need to understand you're taking data that's been accumulated over the last few years, but it's not contemporary data based on our previous election just in November. So just keep that in mind. You would see a lot more
Republican
representation too.
Yeah, and I would look forward to a very realistic day in which we win back Somerset County in this way, right? Middlesex or Union, like those are counties that are next to flip, right? So
Burlington. And Burlington.
I mean, it's silly. That's a whole other subject, but it's silly to me that they've switched.
And even Monmouth could go more Republican, as we see. It is there. So, and of course, Ocean County was very, very Republican. Atlantic County too, as well as Cumberland, Todd, based on the last election. So you'll have to give an updated list or an updated graphic, but the point that you're trying to make is that redistricting through counties, as opposed to the gerrymandering of moving and splitting and having several counties within districts or 2 counties within the legislative district. It would make it more county oriented, which I think is the right way to go, and what most conservatives would, I would believe, agree.
Yeah.
Okay, proceed on.
Yeah, it will take power away from the politicians to keep drawing themselves into existence. I would much prefer that the voters have a little bit more control over this. So places have done this. All right. Currently in the United States, there are several what we call single member by ranked choice voting. So when I said you could vote for 1, 2, 3 of your candidates going down the list, There are places that do this for where they elect just one person. Of course, I'm asking for multiple members, right? Ocean County, I could rank my 5 guys. And so there are places that do this.
Right.
Cambridge, Massachusetts has been doing it since 1946. So it's been a time-tested system. Other countries have used this across the world that are also Anglo, right? We have Australia who uses this all of the time. Ireland, United Kingdom uses it in parts. And then for the Senate, where you would rank, choose your political party, the homogenous states or countries use that system. So Israel, Uruguay, Andorra, these are places that are fairly small areas that works pretty well, where you don't have huge regional differences. So that's just, so it's not completely out there. This is not a brand new idea. This is tested, and it's, this is not completely off the reservation.
Nope.
So that's that. So you guys can see that. Check out any of these countries, look them up if you want to see what it looks like. So let's look at the real political outcomes. So if 10% from the statewide votes from 2016 to 2020, all right. So this is not including assembly and Senate elections of local races in New Jersey. This is just the president, US senator, and governors, which tend to be more Democrat in their lean. So take this with a little bit of the grain of salt. But a 10% variance of, like, if it went 10% more for Republicans or went 10% more for Democrats, you have a fairly good number of competitive seats. 19 could switch from party to party. All right. That puts Republicans in the majority with, fairly comfortable majority by doing that. And that's just the party competitiveness. Even within the same party, if I have an incumbent that I really don't like, I can just put him really low on the list of my rankings, and he can be ousted just on that basis without me possibly, I'll use a good example. Chris Brown, the state senator from Atlantic County, former senator. One of the fears with him retiring was maybe we'll lose the district. Maybe we won't be able to keep a Republican down in the Senate over in Atlantic County. And so that was a real fear. So they made sure to keep him in for the last little while. And then he retired. And thankfully the Republicans won that race, and they did pretty comfortably, actually, which was a good surprise. But sometimes when you're like, if I vote against the incumbent, we might lose it altogether. That's less likely to happen here. I can get rid of bad politicians without feeling like I've just given it all to the other party. So that's a really good feature of this system. So any questions on that?
No, very good. It's all there for us to look at. Of course, you've got the party competitive placements there, represented by purple.
Yeah.
And of course, this is exactly what occurred during the between 2016 and 2020. Would be very different. This would look different if we had a snapshot of what's going to occur in January with the new several Republican gains in the assembly.
Yeah,
but
there was, to give you an idea, this governorship was a 13 percentage point swing in favor of Republican across the state. That would change the entire dynamics of what this looks like, which is why I'm like, take it with a grain of salt. What's more important here is the fact that, there's opportunity for parties to win and to be represented properly by its people.
That's right. And what you're proposing with your thesis is that the counties, we should be electing our representatives based on counties, not the legislative districts that have been picked by these commissions. And that the new commission coming up should be thinking about moving back towards the county model. And what you're proposing is that there will be much more competitive elections through the county, looking at the elections and redistricting through counties, be much more competitive than what we have now, meaning that the voters have greater say and are having more, really, they're making the decisions more than the commissions, which have made the decisions based upon obvious gerrymandering.
Yep, absolutely. So this is what maybe the Senate would look like based on just some polling, which again, notoriously is bad. But this is interesting. So in 2014, there was an estimated that, around 17 seats would be Republicans, and 12 of those people would be defined as conservatives, which is very interesting, right? I think people think that Republicans are really squishy in New Jersey, especially our representatives sometimes, but in reality, we're a fairly conservative state in a lot of respects. But that doesn't necessarily translate to our representatives, and so this might be a little bit better of a representation of what that looks like. And there would be a number of competitive seats. Each election would be seen as quite competitive for winning control. And obviously, this is stuff that is easily able to be changed, but it just shows you some idea of what maybe it would look like. So there's that.
Good.
This is a more defined picture, so you can see the difference between the dot sizes. Now you can clearly see that Cumberland County is significantly larger than Salem's dot. And you can see, but it's fairly even across the state. So it's not radically where you have one guy who's just wildly overpowered versus the rest. Now, before I move on to the next slide, how do we make anything like this actually happen? So the way that I think is best is that major changes to the state constitution were best done through conventions, statewide conventions. And so you can make them limited conventions where we say you're just tackling the legislature, or whatever it is, we want you to deal with fixing this. And so and we can limit it to say you're only allowed to use county-based systems, you're only allowed to use weight voting to equalize the districts. You can only use ranked choice voting. We're not giving them a lot of liberty to change up the entire system to say, well, now it's all going to be single member, 130 people. I don't know. They have strict rules about what they can do.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Why can't we make these changes through the amendment process as opposed to rewriting the Constitution?
My fear with leaving it to the state legislature is they have no vested interest in wanting to change their own elections. So
if their constituents call them and come out in force demanding a simpler, more effective way in which to redistrict the process in New Jersey, the election process in New Jersey. The people are communicating with their representatives the way the system was intended, as devised by our founding fathers. They could let their representatives know, listen, we want to get back to county, we want to get back to the county model as opposed to this redistricting model. But I, of course, being a constitutional Republican, we're a little bit apprehensive on calling for conventions. And if you say that's going to be restricted to just one particular subject or one particular consideration, well, that's one thing. How are you going to guarantee that from it becoming what we're afraid of and what we ineffectually know as a runaway convention?
Yeah, my thought would be
that's what we're apprehensive about as conservatives and as about being constitutional Republicans. We'd like to see an amendment process where the people are letting their legislators know and their representatives know where they want to go with the redistricting process.
My statement regarding that would be is New Jersey has held at least two limited conventions in recent history. So both the 1974 or 1947 one was limited, as well as the 1966, and both were successful in that regard. There was a proposal back in the early 2000s that almost happened, was a convention for taxpayers. And it was a little short of actually being successful, but the gist was that too was going to be a limited convention. I think we need to give people the opportunity to see the system in action in some ways. And so I would hope that I don't care which way it happens, frankly, right? I just want the result. But in my estimation, it is more likely to happen through convention, since legislators would have to eat up a lot of their time to figure this out. Whereas a convention could be strictly dealing with this as the next 2 months or whatever it is they have to do it. They can do the research, have it proposed to them, work through that without having to deal with things like environmental policy or whatever else. The ways they've suggested, the legislature and legal institutions in New Jersey, like Rutgers University and et cetera, have suggested using the current 40 districts for doing it and doing it with 3 members from each. And they even suggested ranked choice voting as the way for electing these guys. So every district would have 3 representatives, kind of like it does now, and they would go to a convention of about 120 members, and then they would figure it out. Now, of course, you could say
another. Now, just let me interject, Todd, because what you've introduced here earlier, you have introduced ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
This is something that has become very popular. It's how the California, how they determine their governor. That's an example of ranked choice voting. And so there are pros and cons to ranked choice voting. It's something that the voters and our viewers and Constitutional Republicans should be looking and reading about, becoming familiar with. There is some validity to it. I haven't made up a concrete position on that, but it is something that we can consider. But of course, we've seen that the process has worked historically well between the 2 parties and the 2 systems and the majorities. However, there have been examples where we have 2 candidates that are, for lack of better words, loathsome in as far as the choice that we're giving. And I'm talking about presidential elections, all the way down maybe to local elections. I don't think that I don't believe that that's the case in elected or local elections as much. But definitely at the national level, we've seen, and maybe even in senatorial elections, the higher the office. But again, that gets back to the people requiring their candidates and their representatives to be constitutionally literate, that they believe in the Constitution, that they want to, they understand that the Constitution is the conduit protecting the people's natural rights. And then they need to require their candidates to have some intellectual rigor, some form of intelligence, rather than being a novice, someone who can articulate a position and use reason and deliberation and not draw lines in the sand and not alienate a whole group of people, but try to educate those people and bringing them into incorporating wisdom and rational decision making, which is what the founders founded the government upon, and we've gotten completely away from. But it's important for the society to be educated, so that they require that same intellectual rigor and constitutional literacy from their representatives. But as far as this process and this type of voting, it is worthy of some consideration, I believe, and you have proposed that here with your presentation.
The difference between California versus this system is that California as a whole, for its governorship, is they use what's called a jungle primary, which means the top 2 winners move on. Whereas at least this gives a little bit more, like Alaska is going to be a lot closer to what I'm talking about. Their new election system, or I mean, in New York City in some respects too. But they have unique reasons for why they need to do that too there. And in my case, I want to see each of the political parties have an opportunity to win across all of the counties, and that's my reason for it. Whereas I am more afraid that if it's strictly, where you have representation just from Hudson County that are Democrats and just Republicans from Ocean County, the likelihood that you have people who are going to simply ignore certain regions of the state is more likely. I'll give you a good idea, a good example. Illinois used something very similar to ranked choice voting all of its history up until 1970, when they were basically forced by the Supreme Court to change things. They did it for over 100 years, and they did that in order to fix the tensions after the Civil War. And so that's one of the thoughts for why to have a system kind of like this. But that's my presentation on this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, so feel free to find me there, folks.
Outstanding. And you have to, the audience needs to understand that, Todd, you're you're just a recent graduate. You graduated in 2020, correct?
That is correct.
From
From
Stockton.
Stockton. Yep.
As an economics major, which is a great major. And look at the work that Todd's put in. Now, this is an example of young men and women who can accomplish so much with a little bit of hard work and effort, which of course Lincoln would appreciate and understand. And this is an example for young professionals who are interested in politics, or interested in representative government, interested in civics, interested in Republican small Rism. And here we have a wonderful presentation put forth that needs to be circulated and socialized about. And I hope that the listeners and our Constitutional Republican Facebook group members, our official New Jersey Constitutional Republican members now that we have, and I'll be discussing more in the days coming. But this is a wonderful presentation, Todd, and you're to be commended. The first time I had you on, we discussed another important post that you put up. And this is what we're looking for with posts with New Jersey Constitutional Republican, our group page and our group. And if you will allow me, Todd, to indulge on a remark that you made about the Constitutional Republican Facebook group page, you said that we're just not a bunch of rah-rah Republicans. and I take that as a compliment, because we're trying to teach the people the Republican Party heritage, the high moral ground upon which the party was founded upon, and the Declaration of Independence as being our platform, and restoring that, as opposed to looking to a particular personality or person. We can look back. If we do look to a person, we should be looking at Lincoln. Of course, his philosophy and his ideal and his method, his rationale, and his prudence and his moderation, his ability to communicate. These are all the attributes that transcend time and generation. There's no reason why we can't incorporate those same attributes today. And that's why you thought of the Constitutional Republicans as being a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more, and that's what we attempt to be. We attempt to be more sophisticated. We attempt to be sharing information with people. Not that we know it all, not that we're condescending to anyone. We can speak to anyone. We can speak to children about this. We talked about with Bill Federer yesterday, the fact that law should be written in such a way that a fourth or fifth grader, or maybe even a child, an infant, can understand what that law is. It should be very, very simple. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about very, very simple ideals that are based upon the laws of nature. Nature's God. These are not complicated ideals or values that we are advocating for. But again, Todd, we want to put the links, and we want to put the presentation, your PP presentation. If we could attach that to what we want to do is edit this video by putting in the information. I'll include the links to the Constitution, state Constitution, also the Eagleton Institution video that was put out talking about the process, but also attaching your PowerPoint presentation to it. But people, be inspired by what Todd is doing here. And young people, join him. The Young Republican Organization in Atlantic County, where you're at, they had their party the other night. I was unable to visit, but and throughout the state, young Republicans, Todd is providing an example for all of us to follow. And we're certainly very, very proud and overjoyed, thrilled to have Todd as a part of our Constitutional Republican team.
Thank you.
So thank you, Todd, and give us a parting word before we say goodbye.
My parting word. Oh, well, thank you, everybody. I would say happy Sunday. May God bless all of you and your families through this holiday season as we approach Christmas. Happy Advent, and enjoy life, but make a little something out of it.
Isn't that wonderful? Very good. Todd, you gave us some great advice, and we may or may not have another virtual conversation before Christmas, but if we don't, I want to wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas. And stay in tune with what we're going to be posting on our NJCR group page, and also we're working on our website, and we've got a big year ahead of us in 2022, Todd. Looking forward to your participation with it. But I want to wish everyone again a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year if we don't talk to you in the meantime. And we'll come out of the gate strong in 2022. And I want to thank everyone for supporting the group this year, for the leaps and bounds that we've made in growing the group. The group has established a notoriety in the state of New Jersey, and I'm very, very proud of that. We will continue to do that as God wills. But again, thank you so much, Todd. We will talk to you again. And let us remember as we sign off what Lincoln said. He said, liberty to all. And that means everyone. Thank you and goodbye.